Good morning, everybody. So, let me introduce our speaker, Reverend Musho. I don't know how, Podulke, I'll say, Smith, completed the Upaya Buddhist Chaplaincy Program in March of 2023. He received Tokudo under Reverend Onryu Kennedy later that year. He works with inmates at the Federal Medical Prison in Rochester and leads a sitting group in Rochester. So, wait a minute. Are you ready? Go.
Go. Hello. Thank you. Thank you, Kyoku.
You're welcome.
Um, Thank you. And thanks for everyone for joining in. And I'm glad to be here. It's really nice to talk to Okiochi again. Um, I know some of you are in Okiochi. Uh, Kyoku is, and Jundan, are you must be in Okiochi also. And the rest are just, we're all at Okiochi spirit. It's great. Um, um, just wanted to talk today about my experiences over the year, partly. I took a couple of trips, religious trips. Um, in the spring, my wife and I, Laurel, we walked the Camino Santiago, the called the St. James Way from through Spain, walking from St. John de Pied-de-Port to Santiago, um, pretty much all the way across Spain. It's 600 miles, and it's an old religious pilgrimage founded in the 10th century, and a lot of people, nowadays treat it as a hike. It's a well-supported, um, somewhat spiritual hike in the spirit of a kind of post-religious spirituality. It seems very European. Um, a lot of people treat it that way. Um, but for me, the idea of a pilgrimage was just very appealing, and um, being very attracted, essentially, to any physical expression of religion. Um, um, it was a really wonderful experience. And one of the things that struck me as you walk, we tended to walk about 10, 15 miles a day. And you do that for about 6 weeks. You can cover about 600 miles, 590 miles. And you walk through all kinds of beautiful terrain and wheat and vineyards. Um, and stop at a lot of old churches, and they're all old Catholic churches. One of the things that uh, most go uh, the order that I wanted. All right, well, figure this out. Do we have? We don't have a screen that I'm looking for yet. Do it. Am I screen sharing? Do it. Does everyone see a big Buddha? You do see a big Buddha. Well, that's not in Spain, I'm afraid. Jumping ahead. Um, on my other photo. I think this is a kind of spontaneous altar. Do we see a Madonna here? So am I showing my screen? Okay, so everything on the screen is fine. So one of the just kind of spontaneous, beautiful expressions of devotion that you see all along the trail. I don't know, probably 30 times a day. Um, these lots of crucifixes, Madonnas that people add to. They drape with clothing and offerings. They leave coins, pile up rocks. Um, Here's a lovely Madonna. And you see these out on the trail, just in the open air. And then you also see something that I found really stunning is the Maria Dolorosa. It's kind of a wonderful, how would you call it? Sort of institutionalized folk art. Um, it is these beautiful statues, um, always draped in wonderful robes, a silver crown. The Madonna has a tearful face. Sometimes she has all these swords sticking into her heart on the outside, um, hands clasped. It really looks like it's Avalokiteshvara, hearing the cries of the world. It's not just her her son, the divinity who's um, suffering. It's her and all of us, and it's all of our suffering that she's taking on. And you just see all these, and you see like the many different expressions, and every town has to have one. They have practices built around them. In Villafranca, this beautiful hilly town, with really steep um, streets, many of which are essentially just steps, like 10 stories up, 10 stories down, with little streets in between. Um, they have this practice of carrying this huge, heavy um, icon through the streets on a big beer. Can't be easy. You want to make yourself suffer. Set yourself the task of carrying this huge uh, sculpture with, of course, a band preceding it, clouds of incense. Um, we got to see a procession, not in Villafranca, but in another town in which they weave through the streets with a Madonna from one church, and then they leave from another with a crucifix. Um, it's interesting to me that the Madonna was much larger than the crucifix. And then when they come together with the band playing at the city square, they release these doves. That was on Easter morning. Um, just these wonderful, spontaneous, seemingly spontaneous, totally heartfelt, traditional expressions of devotion. And I got the picture, and I've been holding on to this notion ever since that um, the way that we people practice religion, the way that it makes meaning for us in our lives is not always the same as what the religious professionals tell us it is. It's not always in the literature, um, the sacred texts, scriptures, and descriptions of what this all means. Um, just looking at the Maria Dolorosa and the Madonna in general, um, it's, it's seems to be, to me, beyond, any of the explanations that are made for it. It's beyond theology. Theology is definitely there, um, but I felt a connection totally separate from any of the sort of philosophical notions of, um, Christ dying for my sin, or the meaning of the Mother of God, um, and her connection to divinity, motherhood as a kind of origination of divinity. All these things are beautiful, and so on, but they're more heartfelt than they are intellectual. And it's not to discount the intellectual validity of the theology. It's just, I think that in some way there's a gap. This is what I read once I started looking at it, what Norman Fisher calls a gap between um, how people practice religion and how it works inside of them, and what we say about it. And I think that's something that we need to pay some attention to, especially in the West, where Buddhism is, for most of us, is a adopted religion. We're converts essentially, and often our attraction to it is intellectual. Um, I can understand. I mean, it certainly was for me. I see uh, my first descriptions of Buddhism as essentially a philosophy, of um, a kind of self-improvement. Even if it's a self-improvement which involves um, lessening the self, or taming the self, or even erasing in some way the self, or making myself somehow connected to all being. It's still a kind of self-help project. And, um, it read Dogen at all, we could see that his whole project is not a self-help project. It's not a means to an end at all. And so there's some contradiction there, and it's more complicated than it might look on the surface. The, the expression of religion is not necessarily the same as the theology. Um, so, in walking this, what they call the way, the ancient path of the Santiago, my wife, who's more of an atheist even than I am, she said she was filled with the Holy Spirit. It's like, so um, I was filled with the Holy Spirit, but I like to think that I'm filled with the Holy Spirit all the time. So it's no big stretch for me. Um, but some of these are just beautiful, and someday, I'd like to put together a lot of. She's the better photographer, and took a lot of really great pictures of the statuary, the icons, and the art. Some of the best, I have to say, are not the high art that found in the cathedrals of Lyon or um, Pamplona, but just in these humble little cold churches where you know um, the paintings are a little bit yeah, they're kind of naive, but they have so much um, wonderful heartfelt energy, you know. Uh, so that was that's the um, our Camino experience, and it really got me thinking just about this gap um, between our practice and what we're doing, what we're actually doing. When in the last just a couple of weeks ago, or little over a week ago, my wife and I went with our, so good at this. We went to India, and we have a friend who invited us to a wedding, and turns out we didn't get to go to the wedding, but we did go to uh, the first part of the trip, and he arranged that I could have experience at could go to Bodh Gaya, site of Buddhist enlightenment, which is a wonderful experience. I would recommend it to anyone. I don't know, has anyone here been to Bodh Gaya? Um, it's 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 the state of Bihar. It's not particularly a Buddhist practicing area. I mean, most of Bihar is a Hindu, and we were there during Durga Puja, which is a kind of like a Hindu Christmas, and um, it's impressive the religious fervor of people of India. Um, the even the Hindus know more about Buddhism than a lot of Buddhists that I know. Um, but Bodh is a kind of has been now for I don't know maybe 100 years or so has been a kind of Buddhist pilgrimage site because of its status as the site of Buddhist enlightenment. They have an ancestor of the Bodhi tree, which is um, the most lovely expression of Buddhist practice is to circumambulate that tree. Um, and then right behind the tree is this they call it a shrine in which there's this statue of Shakyamuni. It's a lovely statue. It's a, kind of a cramped quarters and a really interesting setup. The the air outside in Bihar when we were there was well over 100 degrees, I think, a lot of the time, really humid. They've got it's in this sort of stone obelisk type structure, and they've also got air conditioning cranked. Um, so it's really kind of a wonderful, stunning physical experience to walk into this hallway through the metal detector first, but you get in there and there's people crowded in there, and there's an attendant who trying to manage all this to keep people from just hanging out there all day. But um, the whole scene in Bodh Gaya, the temple there, is this beautiful international Buddhist conglomeration of mostly what it looks like to me is devotional practice, a kind of heartfelt uh, expression of love. Um, People offering fruit, piling fruit up onto the altar, cash, um, rupees tucked into every corner. Um, of course, a big box to more appropriately or more institutionally collect the rupees. Um, um, Flowers. Uh, Often people just bring like a big plate of chrysanthemum petals and make an offering there. There's a huge table around the side where huge strings of marigolds are laid out, big swirls, and they're draped on all surfaces and so on. And then you see people from every like Asian culture, Koreans and Japanese and Chinese and Indonesians and um, all different costumes, Tibetan, red, red skirts, and there's singing, chanting. There's a huge garden which is um, filled with stupas, but also these sort of it looks almost like a homeless encampment, but it's um, practitioners from all over the world who just camp there and meditate during the cooler parts of the day. It's really a wonderful experience. But I think the big practice, besides making offering to the Buddha, is to circumambulate the, the altar, the shrine, along with the tree. And the tree, clearly has like won the evolutionary lottery as far as trees go. Um, every day they go into this enclosure where it's uh, sort of fenced to the trunk of it. You could see the trunk, but it's fenced behind this stone and glass to protect it. Its branches are held by these perfectly positioned metal poles. Um, they climb up with cherry pickers and cut off any sick-looking branches. They spray it to prevent any disease or to keep the bugs off it. It's a beautiful tree, sprawling, healthy as a tree could be, and people are making offerings to it like it were the Buddha himself. And clearly, this is not. It's something beyond our notions of what the tree means, or um, honoring the very place where the enlightenment occurred. It's the heartfelt expression is the practice, you know. Um, and then we also got to go up to when we spent about 4 days in Bulgaria. I got to go to the temple there um, a whole bunch of times through those days, which is really great. There's also a pretty large Tibetan Buddhist um, presence there. There's all kinds of temples, which are essentially um, outpost temples from various um, Buddhist um, nations and denominations. I think this is the Tibetans. It's a really beautiful setup there, and I just love some of their imagery. And then when we left Bulgaria, we went up to Sikkim, and which is more of a. There's a lot of Nepalese there, it's the mountains, and a lot of Tibetan monastic temples there. Um, Got to visit those, and the the art there is also just really sumptuous. This notion of practicing presence uh, or directing yourself towards a large golden statue, which is clearly um, as Shakyamuni, but also sometimes it's Avalokiteshvara or Padmasambhava, the Tibetan, Rinpoche guru. Um, it could be Vairochana, the sort of mystical, uh, how do you describe it? But all these Tibetans particularly have a great sort of um, gift for ritualizing their devotion, and they've taken it, I think, to a step that that that's all over in our Zen practice, but to me often seems kind of puzzling. Um, the, the the various names for Buddha, the notion that there are all of these Buddhas everywhere in the world, but that are somehow also expressed in myself. Um, I don't know about you, but I often find this kind of puzzling, and it's not um, necessarily consistent, at least on the face. It's not consistent with um, my notion of what I'm doing, my Zen practice. I don't, it's, I have a hard time um, integrating it. What am I learning here? What am I doing with all this? The practices are clearly lovely. Um, so many of these, some of them are really old, some of them are really new. It can be large, it can be small. Tibetans really, they, they're Baroque in every way. Costume, sometimes the Buddhas are just draped with scarves and clothes, food, cash. Um, it's such a heartfelt expression. The I've done my pictures pretty soon. This might be a little bit more of a modern um, thing, but I know that uh, this this is a lovely sculpture. Um, named the town Rangak or something. It's also in the mountains up there. Buddha Park, um, where you can also get some Tathagata fast food, including falafel and paneer balls fried. It's a it, this is this huge, beautiful, upright Buddha um, practicing there since I think 1975 or so. There's a kind of temple in the middle with all kinds of relics and beautiful paintings, just showing the life of the Buddha all the way to the parinirvana. All of the various lineage of Tibetan Rinpoches are represented in statuary all the way around. Um, really quite something. I guess my 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 point was partly just how wonderful it is to to be with people who are Buddhists, and, and as a more a tourist really than a practitioner, a tourist like all the other uh, Asian Indian tourists walking around Buddha Park. Um, I still could feel, the the kind of devotional practice and the attention to ritual in the Vajrayana, the Tibetan style Buddhist practice. There's there's clearly a connection or a unity between meditation, devotion, and ritual. And they don't, that obviously they have their differences, but I think they're bringing them all together as a kind of unified practice. And then, and since I got back, I've been, poking around trying to see who else is thinking about this. And I mean, I've seen this kind of talk before. There's a great article. You might know it. Dan Layton, Tigan Dan Layton's article in a book called Zen Ritual Studies in Zen Buddhist Theory and Practice. And he makes a case, I think a very convincing case, that when Dogen is talking about practice as realization, that this is not different from the Vajrayana notion of practice as ritual reenactment, or even maybe not reenactment, ritual enactment. That in a real sense, the way that Dogen is describing our practice is if it's not a kind of self-help goal seeking process which we make a Buddha. It's doing what Buddhas do. So if you sit single-mindedly and you do what Buddhists do, which is to sit upright in this particular posture, posture not just of your body, but your mind, your spirit, your intention, and the key, I think, is your devotion, your love. That's part of the posture. And if you do that, then you are doing what Buddhas do. So you're not making a Buddha. You're not making yourself into a Buddha. You're doing what Buddhas do, which is what he called actualizing the fundamental point. So I think in this way, you could see that ritual, that is enactment, a kind of doing, devotion, that is a heartfelt expression, bringing your love to play, and meditation, focused introspection. They're not separate things. They may look separate, and all of the theory of Buddhist belief, practice, the three bodies of the and our understanding, prajna, so on. Those are, you could see that these things, in some ways, might are at least fueled or supplemented or supported by this practice. So it's not the theory that comes first, it's the practice that comes first. And the practice is somehow meant to be at the center. The article by Tigan Layton, Chicago. This wonderful quote. He says that Dogen, before he was a Zen practitioner, studied Tendai, which is a Vajrayana practice, not Tibetan Buddhism, but it's Vajrayana and has a lot of the kind of intellectual underpinnings that the Tibetans also have, a devotion, a kind of strong devotional practice and ritualized meditation, ritualized practice, identifying yourself, your own practice, sometimes through images or statuary or a mandala, visualizing mandalas and so on. That all of this is a way of bringing yourself fully together in your practice and channeling it in a certain way. A very different style than Zen practice, which is much more simple, at least on the surface. But Dogen practiced in this way too, and so it stands, he says, as a kind of background to his understanding of what practice is and how we relate to it. So, quote from Robert Thurman, the American expert on that. He's saying that essentially that Buddhist practice is a physical practice, that what we're doing isn't so much orienting our mind to learn something, even about ourselves or about our connection to the rest of the world, but to transform our bodies. And I guess I can really see that in in practicing in the presence of one of these great big golden Buddha bodies, in which you uh, somehow, it's like you're submitting yourself to the calmness that's in this statue. Um, you're connecting with the life that is everywhere expressed through that image. It's beyond any intellectual explanation of it. Um, and I think that's something we can reclaim, that we can build ourselves. The Zen style is a lot more stripped down than these really florid Baroque Tibetan style. But we have an altar and we make offering, um, and when we do these things, clearly it's an expression of the heart, and so is zazen. Zazen is an opening of the heart too, obviously. So yeah, maybe I'll pause there and just throw it open. I'd like to hear speaking a little bit. Does anyone have any questions about any of this or any thoughts about these topics?
I'm wondering if you could comment on the Buddhist tradition of I always forget the name of the ceremony, but celebrating hungry ghosts
Oh yeah, hungry ghosts.
because, yeah, because the things that you've been talking about today, it's really interesting. It's kind of a cross section of a lot of things I'm familiar with and really appreciate your sharing. And one of the few things in Zen that I've struggled with is is the hungry ghost ceremony, despite despite having a lot of familiarity with what you're talking about, with offerings, with these
Yeah,
types of traditions, and even having an appreciation for them. But I have even a strong aversion, and I don't know why, but I do, and that's something for me to practice with. But I'm just wondering what your comments are about that tradition in Zen.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know a lot about the hungry ghost ceremony, or necessarily have any strong ideas about it. My sense is that it's a way of bringing in something that is a fully human tendency, something that is a barrier to our practice, and bringing it in a loving way so that we can understand it. Um, in our practice, it's a big thing. A big part of it is that we're not making any enemies. You know, we're not t um, taking part of ourselves, some tendency that we have, and saying, you are bad. I need to crush you. I think there's this great wisdom in recognizing that these are fully human tendencies in us and in others, and um, we want to tame them in some way or satisfy them without letting them be a barrier to our practice. I don't know. You can just feel how there's something loving in it. There's something loving towards these beings, and
Mhm.
obviously these beings are, you know, it's a tendency in ourselves to want more and more, to never be satisfied, to be greedy, and that can come out in our practice too. Our practice can be an expression of greed. So it's wily. It's hard to take, you know. And even taming, maybe that's not the right word, because we want to bring it in and we want to understand it in a loving way. So that's what I see as in in the heart of those kinds of practices. The Tibetans, also have this kind of just amazing, rich, you know, panoply of beings, gods and bodhisattvas and deities of protection, fierce deities, so on. Clearly, they're all parts of Buddha nature, or um, um, but also parts of our own psyche. It's a kind of a really well developed technology of psychological introspection, you know, identifying things that are tendencies, parts of ourselves, and working with them towards essentially kind of unifying, bringing them all together so that we can closer to this wholeness. I think the main project. And Zen, it's it's actually pretty simple when you compare it to the Tibetans, but it's still more complicated, more 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 various than talking therapy, or the kind of really stripped down modern versions of Zen. where I don't even if you call it Zen, just like a plain sort of secularized mindfulness meditation practice, which I think, it obviously has its value, but I don't know if that's Zen. And um, to me, it wouldn't be enough. To me, it seems to leave most of the good stuff, untouched. So it's hard, like, I don't know, coming to terms with some of these things that to us look kind of alien, like hungry ghosts. Where does it fit? How to understand it? But I think it's worth doing. I feel like it's really worth trying to come to terms with it. Making when you make like at sashimi, got that water, the washing water, to walk out and give it to a little plant. It's just such a gentle gesture. It's such a wonderful way to erase something as powerful as greed. I love it.
Hey, I I participate in the just sitting retreats, and these are people who are really put off by Zen ritual and don't want to have any part of it. I don't want to try to explain those people, but it's something they don't want that to be part of their practice. I don't quite understand it. I like the just sitting retreats because there's a lot of sitting. And there's also one of the interesting things is they've had to evolve and develop their own rituals, some of which are actually more effective in some ways than Zen rituals. Like when we come back from Kinhin, we all wait and until we're all at our places and then bow. So there's this sense of community instead of just coming back in and sitting immediately. But there's no liturgy, there's no talking, there's nobody giving a talk, and there is no talking. It is the quietest retreats I've ever been on because nobody's having to discuss how to do any of these rituals, how to take part in your task. On the other hand, I've come to really appreciate sashins and the various roles in that because it's not about you. It's about you putting yourself in a place and participating as to support the community. So it's a very complex area.
Yeah.
My first my first spiritual organization was guru based and very, very heavily devoted. It's very much into devotion. And I found that I was not into that level of devotion. I was uncomfortable with that level of devotion and the people around me being that far into devotion. But I do things in my own home, like ringing bells and bowing and stuff, that is kind of devotional. And it's like a quiet Zen-like devotional kind of practice. So, and Kikan just gave a talk on faith in Buddhism, what faith is like. Faith is not faith in most religions is some kind of belief in something that you can't verify. Whereas in Buddhism, faith is an expression of what you can verify. So this is the whole embodiment thing. This is every, a lot of people who teach Zen practice understand the physical nature, that this intellectual thing isn't going to touch it, that the only way you're going to understand this aspect is the embodiment of it and the practice of it through the physical practice of sitting. So this is an interesting area, and I know some people get into the whole devotional thing. Some people just can't abide it at all. So for whatever reason,
Yeah.
whatever
And I'm
reason.
sure their reasons are totally sincere, right? I mean, um, uh, it's not our place to question somebody's, how they come to this practice, or to, you know, judge one practice over another. I get the sense, you could see this in all kinds of ways, that something like ritual, maybe we think of it as being a purview of religion, but it's really all around. There's all kinds of rituals that have nothing, we think have nothing to do with religion. Religion has been, chopped up and farmed out to all kinds of different things. When they ring the bell on the stock exchange, you know, that's a ritual, clearly. Halloween, you know, um, God, there's just so many things where the expression, where the doing is the thing itself, and to even ask, what does it mean? You can feel that you're putting something on it that really uh, it's clearly it means something, but the real meaning is in the expression of doing, where it's all feels totally unified, like getting married, be like a wedding. A wedding is obviously it's a ritual, um, and once you've done the wedding, it's done, and you're married. It's the doing of it that made it happen. I think there's so many things like that aren't necessarily religious or quasi-religious, um, and I suspect you wonder if we have. I mean, some of us have been burned by religion, you know, in some pretty drastic ways. Religion has actually let us down, maybe. It's been exploitive or used against people, turn people against each other. And so the, you got to respect, people are not going to play along with that. But it's too bad. What you say about the just sitting retreat, it almost suggests that they're they they can minimize ritual, but really it's still there. Those things are still there, and in a way, like Leighton says in his article, Zazen is ritual. That we could see it as a full expression that is what it does, and it's not outside of itself. And so maybe we don't necessarily need other kinds of ritual. I have never done one of those retreats. They do bowing, don't they? Mhm.
Bowing is bowing is a up to you. If you're comfortable bowing, then you bow. And if you're
Yeah.
not comfortable bowing, then you don't bow. And so I I get in those certain situations and I just bow. And then, other people then begin to be more comfortable bowing and other people don't bow at all. So a lot depends on on who's across from you and what they're doing. And, if someone bows to you, it's this is all this training is someone bows to you, you bow back, right? So and initiating bows. So it's like if you're comfortable with it, you can bow. If you're not comfortable with it, you don't bow. But so and there's a morning recitation, which surprised me that they couldn't get away from that. So whoever is the timekeeper in any given morning gets to choose from a selection of short short sutras or short passages, poems, and gets to read one of those in the morning. So they can't get away from it completely, and some of that is the fact that you're working in a group and you have to do things as a community, as a kind of a core. So one of the interesting things that's happened lately is the cooks were announcing what the meal was, and they decided a decision was made that no, you don't have to do that. We don't have to talk. We don't have to talk at all. You don't have to announce what the food is. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So it's like that's kind of the ritual of like um, keeping this silence is part of the ritual. So
Silence and stillness can be a ritual to itself.
yeah, yeah,
And I think Leighton is right that sitting is ritual. It definitely has a transformative aspect, and maybe we could see talk of transforming ourselves, making ourselves better people as a kind of um, upaya, a way of bringing people in, but not necessarily the only way to understand.
Well, this has been a rich conversation, and thank you very much. We have a ritual of stopping at 10:30, which is the time we're at right now, and just saying a few things. So thank you so much, Musho, for bringing pictures and your thoughtful reflections and inviting us in to that process. So the next part of this process is talking about what comes next. I want everybody to know that our board of directors, many of whom would ordinarily be on screen with us, are meeting. They've been we've had a board of director weekend, so we have a few less people with us than we usually do. We're going to have a Caring for the Land retreat next weekend, which is a totally different kind of devotion and sitting. But you're welcome to come, and it's often something that other people that are curious but maybe not very involved with Hokyoji often appreciate that particular form of getting together and being together. So that's next weekend, Friday arrival and Sunday departure. Then we're going to have Patrice Kolsch, and who is from Common Ground in terms of her more daily practice, and Onryu Kennedy, who's an associate teacher at Hokyoji, will be leading a November retreat. You can see dates. It's on the website, called Songs of the Tathagata. And then another November event will be Mark Anderson and Melissa Link, using instruments and movement and holding a retreat in that regard. And then finally, for the year, Rohatsu in the first week of December, which will be taught by Dokai. So that's what's coming up, and we can tell you that anytime you feel moved to make a contribution, that's very helpful, because right now we're doing a number of things that mean that we'll need more money. We're about we've already sort of started the building of the next Zendo, because the current one has served faithfully, but is unable to continue, just like us. So with that said, let's do our 4 vows and call it a Sunday talk. So here we go. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. So see you next week. May your weeks go well. Thank you for all you bring to Hokyoji for all of us to enjoy, including our favorite cat.
Take care, everyone. Have a great day.